Gene, it's an honor to be back here with you again. You've been such a good friend over the years, as have so many people in this room and in this organization, dating all the way back to the 90s when I ran for the county council the first time as a young lawyer who came out of the private sector and wanted to bring that private sector sensibility to local government. Had an opportunity to do that for 9 years on the county council, and then to do that as Attorney General for 8 years. That wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have had those opportunities if it hadn't been for AGC and its members stepping up early and often to support my candidacy and to collaborate with me on making good public policy throughout my time as an elected official. AGC has understood throughout its existence that you get the government you vote for. You get the government you work for. That our government, being a representative democracy, depends on two critical factors. One, it depends on people stepping forward and offering themselves as leaders, running for election, and then holding office. You know, it's our entire model is based on volunteerism, starting with George Washington, who volunteered to leave his very nice home overlooking the Potomac River, where Martha would have been more than happy if he just stayed, and volunteered again and again and helped launch this country on the path that it's been on. Volunteers continue to be crucial. You know, it's so important to get quality people to step up and run, people who bring a variety of perspectives and experiences. So many people that I see in Olympia today, for example, have spent their entire careers in government. I respect their public service ethic. I'm glad that they want to continue to serve. But so many people I run into in policymaking roles in the legislature have never been in the private sector. And they complain about how tough politics is, how hard campaigns are, and that's all true. But they don't understand what it's like to own a business, to work for a business where your competition is trying to eat your lunch every single day, where every day is a campaign. There is no finish line, because that's the nature of a free market economy, of a capitalist system. So you have to get people elected who bring the right experiences and perspective to kind of leaven that whole loaf that's being baked in Olympia. You have to bring people in who understand what impacts government decisions have on businesses, on their employees, on their workers. The second key ingredient in our system of representative democracy, once you have a good candidate, is you have to support that candidate. That candidate can't get anywhere without a lot of help. That's never been more true than it is today. Campaigns are expensive, they take a long time, and you need a lot of help when you run. Even Bellevue City Council races now will raise and spend $100,000. We see races for the state legislature routinely involving hundreds of thousands of dollars. And don't even get me started about races for Congress or the Senate or a governor. That race costs Gene a lot of money, I'm here to tell you. So, you know, it takes to borrow a phrase, it takes a village to get a good person elected. Now, what you need to do to be ready to do that is you've got to be engaged. If you don't pay attention to politics, it will happen to you. The impact of politics, of governing, of policy making already affects your business every single day and will continue to do so as long as you're in business. Now, what happens is you come into your company and you find the world as it is at that time. You kind of accept as a given that we get a certain amount of regulation and laws and hassles. But it can get a lot worse. Why is that? It's because the other key fact about our system of government is that it is shaped and dramatically affected by special interests. And I don't mean that in a bad sense. I'm not using that as a curse word. We're all a special interest. I care a lot about charter schools and about improving our public school system. I'm the father of 4 kids who've all been through public schools. That's a special interest of mine. You have to care about your ability to stay in business and thrive and be able to do business with state government sometimes if you're doing a public contract or with a local government. So that's a special interest. The labor unions are special interests, God knows. And they're very good at what they do. And think about why that is for a minute. Why are the special interests that support, the current governor, for example, or the current county executive, or the current mayor of Seattle, why are they so focused, so determined, so relentless? It's because, on average, those groups depend on government itself in order to exist. They depend on government awarding them, giving them jobs, awarding them contracts, making the rules for union membership and recruiting and the like. They pay a lot of attention because they're so dependent on government itself. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. They have every right to be engaged and to try to get their point of view across and to try to get their friends elected as anyone else does. But because of their motivation being so intense, they never lose focus on that. You see this happen in every single legislative session. There are two main themes in every legislative session. It's like a Japanese kabuki play. You can predict exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen and who's going to say what. It doesn't make it any less important or doesn't make the stakes any less. In every session, one theme is there isn't enough money. We need more tax revenue. We heard this in the last recession. We've heard that throughout the current economic expansion. We're hearing it today. No matter how fast government tax revenues go up with a growing economy, it's not enough. Because the folks who depend on those special interests, who in turn depend on government spending, know that the easiest way to make their friends happy is to expand the pie and give them a bigger slice of that bigger pie. The problem with the principle of spending other people's money is that it's other people's money, it's easy to spend. And if all the pressure on you is to spend more of it to make your friends happy, then you're going to justify that to the nth degree. Once again this year, for example, there is a proposal in the legislature to put an income tax on the ballot. Voters in Washington State have rejected a state income tax 9 times since the 1930s. You might ask, what part of no don't they understand? Voters in this state have said 6 times just in the last 10 or 15 years, 6 times they've said, we think the legislature should only increase taxes if a supermajority of the legislature, of 2/3 of them, believe it's right and necessary. This is not a radical idea. Look at the bylaws of the teachers union, one of the biggest advocates for an income tax and for more spending that there is. They hate the 2/3 rule for the legislature. But their own bylaws say that teachers' dues to the union cannot be increased without a 2/3 vote. Apparently it's sauce for the goose, but definitely not sauce for the gander. So in every legislative session, you have the forces that say, we need more money, we need to spend more, because frankly, it's easier to give away more money than to make choices among your friends' priorities. And every year, those special interests come back and they move the goalposts farther and farther out. Why does that happen? It's because they're all trying to keep their jobs too, just like the politicians are. The toughest elections out there, as far as I've seen, are elections for union leadership. And this is not a knock on them, this is just the reality. I have a lot of respect for what these guys go through, these men and women go through to get elected. It's tough because you're running for re-election to be a leader in your union. It's a pretty good job, right? Have you noticed the people in the union leadership positions tend to make more money than the people they represent? And every time you run, some yahoo steps up and says, oh, I can get more for you if you vote for me. And so they're constantly moving the goalposts farther and farther out with the elected officials. It's just the way it is. Not right or wrong, it's just politics. That means that if you have another view, that maybe taxes are high enough, or at least general taxes are, or that there are enough regulations that we need to be reasonable in how we do business, but we also need to avoid being regulated out of business. That means you've got to have you have skin in the game. You've got to be in the game. So that starts, number one, I'll leave you with 3 points. It starts with, number one, with awareness. You have to pay attention to what's going on. Right now, as Liz reminded me, all of the news is about the presidential campaign. The news media love presidential campaigns. It's like one long NFL playoff season for them, right? They love it. It drives ratings. It makes sense that they would. I was over at Kyle Radio this morning, and they were saying this is the perfect time of the cycle for talk radio, and that makes the advertisers happy, right? So, a lot of the attention right now is focused nationally. My point to you is you've got to pay attention to what's going on in your local races and in your state races as well. First of all, because as you know, state and local regulation has a tremendous impact on your industry, on every phase of your industry, from permitting to labor rules to public contracting, all of it. Secondly, you need to pay attention because people who are elected to the City Council of Mercer Island or the City Council of Seattle or Issaquah or anywhere else in our region are often the people you then see running for the state legislature, who in turn often are the ones you see running for Congress and so forth. So you have to pay attention to what they're doing. You have to pay attention to who they are. Number two, you need to get to know them. One thing about running for office is that you find you're just scrambling, trying to find people you can meet and win over to your side. You'll go to every bridge opening, store opening, and garage door opening that you're invited to. So, you have an opportunity in your companies to invite your local elected officials in, not just when they're campaigning, invite them in while they're serving, to come in and learn about your company, your industry, your work, what you do for the community. Don't assume they know, because they probably don't. We live in an era of specialization. All of us is very specialized in our careers. And so the odds are the person you're inviting in doesn't understand the world of contracting. Bring them in, educate them. I guarantee you it helps. It builds rapport. It creates a channel of communication that you can use later on if you need to, and they'll walk away better for that process. It doesn't guarantee that by any means they're always going to do what you want, but you've got a better chance if you've taken the time to meet with them and communicate with them. AGC as an organization is really good at that. That's why Gene and I became friends. It's why your outstanding staff, they've been friends of mine, and your leadership as well, because they took the time to invite me so I could listen and learn, and then so they could hear from me as well. So then the third thing you need to do is you need to decide who you're going to support, right? You need to decide who you're going to get behind. They have to have your support. I'm here to tell you that the other side, as I've described it, and it's in a binary world, they are very, very good at this. Very good. And they help their friends, and they go all the way to get them elected, and they do a good job of it. Frankly, the reason we have a majority in the state Senate today and have nearly taken the state House back has less to do with our collective skill in supporting candidates and more to do with the fact we've had some really good people step up in the last several years to offer themselves as candidates. They're just superb. But we have to get better at supporting the women and men who put themselves forward to run for office, to make sure that more of those who have the experience that we think they need to have, that have the perspectives that we think are important, that they actually get into office. So I understand very, very well the day-to-day pressures of business. I see it with my clients all the time, how tough it is just to stay in business and grow the company and be successful. I understand that the competitive pressures that companies face are relentless. But I also understand that you can't take politics, you can't take the quality of people representing you, you can't take the quality of your government for granted. If you take your eye off that ball, it'll come back to haunt you as a company and as an industry. So I'm here really just to rally you to that idea, that as tempting as it is to put that off, to leave it for later, to hope that someone else will take care of it for you, as tempting as that is, you have to resist that temptation. You have to devote a little bit of your time every week, every month, every year to a focus on these issues. You can do that through a great organization like AGC, but you also need to do it through your own individual efforts your own company efforts, and I hope you'll do that. And I hope also in closing that you'll continue to consider me a friend and a resource. I'm happy to be an advisor to you. I don't intend to leave the private sector. It's treated me very, very well. Did you know you can actually make more money outside of government? I didn't even. I'd been out of the private sector so long, I'd forgotten that you could do that. So I don't think I'm going to be running for office again because I don't want my family to make those sacrifices, and they are significant. But as Gene intimated in his opening and very generous introduction to me, I'm going to remain involved. This is my country, my state, my home, and I'm not going to leave it to somebody else to figure out who to support, who to get behind, who to get elected, because I know that the government I get is only as good as the government I work for. Thank you very, very much.